Vroom, vroom.
So now we're looking at it all, and we're thinking about it, and it would be lovely to be able to demonstrate this car in England to show people just what a midget racing car's capable of doing. Lovely. That's what happens sometimes.
Yeah, the chassis is looking pretty stripped.
Yeah, that's looking stripped. But you see, again, we don't want to take that to bits anymore now, because we're going to put the engine back in there as it is complete.
Yeah.
So we can see where the starter motor, you know,
how it all fits in.
It might fit, it might. Oh, that's right, isn't it? Not for that. It says in the bill it had a new crank.
Did you try turning it over in the end?
No.
There's a bit of rust on one of the rods, but looks like a nice crank in there.
Does say in the bill, brand new crank.
Yeah, rods look good. All balanced.
Right, well, we've got the engine out, and I've always said you mustn't start a racing engine unless you look inside it, and I think I'm absolutely right, and I'll show you why. This oil seal was completely broken, so it would have been pouring oil out the rear main. Then, when we took it to bits, we noticed all of that. So there's obviously something flying around in there. So we took the side plates off, and if you look at the conrod, there's some little bits. I mean, it could only be a spring washer or something, but it's had a few bits touching that rod, which is not good, right? So we look in there, look. Firing nicely. Bit rich, but firing nicely. Oh! Like brand new. So they ain't fired on that for a little while. And it looks to me like there's a little bit of metal missing round the valve seat. There's something wrong there. So, this is going to need a bit of attention, you know, because it is a proper racing engine. So anyway, we'll take it all a bit. So now we're looking at it all, and we're thinking about it, and it would be lovely to be able to demonstrate this car in England to show people just what a midget racing car's capable of doing. You know, I'm thinking of the Lime Rock or whenever it was, and the bloke went out and beat everybody. You know, but it's impossible because you've got to be able to make a standing start. There's no rolling starts at hill climbs in this country, and very rarely is there a rolling start in a race. So it's going to have a clutch. So then you think about it, well, okay, so it's got to have a clutch. We could do that. But having another gear doesn't need a gearbox, a close ratio, nothing. It just needs a little low first gear to move it off, put it in the top, and then it would be exactly the same as it was before. You'd have to rely on changing the quick changes to get the ratio right. So that means that if you said, oh, well, we'll make it exactly like it was in the old days, you just put it in the top gear, don't push the clutch out, push it with a car, and it'll start, and that'll be exactly the same as what it was before. But it just so happens that we've got this lovely, original 2-speed gearbox, which came off of an Indy car. I think they used to use it just to have the low gear to drive around the paddock and what have you, and obviously again to get it off the line. That is a knockout. Now if you look at it, that's the in-out box that came off of there. And this is the 2-speed. Well, if you look at it, it's about the same length. So the only difference between that and being able to put this one on the car would be the width of the bell housing to take the flywheel and the clutch. So that possibly would mean it would be like, oh, let's have a little look. I reckon 3.5 inches difference. So in other words, that would be 3.5 inches on top of there. Now, if you look at the torque arm, shortly that would be a doggy, because it unbolts there, that obviously goes on there. You know, that is just made to be modified. So what we're saying is, if we was to put this together with the 2-speed gearbox, the clutch, accelerator, brake, clutch, so everything will be in a normal position. So when the chips get down, your feet will automatically do what they normally do, which is, you've got to do that in my opinion, because you ain't got time to think, oh dear, no, that's the clutch, oh no, that. And I certainly haven't got time. My feet work automatically, so, you know, that's what we do. So that's it, that's what we're thinking about doing. So what we thought we'd do, we just mock it up. We've got this dodgy old flywheel here, came off of a Ford Crossflow. We got a big clutch, which can be single plate or twin plate. We can alter the centre in there to suit the first motion shaft. Or we can make the first motion shaft suit that, but we'd be easy to modify that. So we thought, well, we'd just mock it up. So we're not going to take the engine to bits at the moment. We're going to make that flywheel fit on there. And then we've got a little starter motor, which could go there, or there, or there, or there. So we try it on the car. If we put this back in the car, we can get an idea whether it can be done without butchering the car. We don't really want to butcher the car, but the chances of this going back to America are a bit slim. And even if it did, all we got to do is select top gear on that, don't push the clutch out, and push it, and it's exactly the same, except it might be 3 inches further back.
So we're just doing the final cut, it's only a mock-up, just so that we can stick this onto the end of the Offy engine, and we can use it as a mock-up.
Okay. It's like a dummy.
Yeah. Right, so in theory that should go on there like that.
See, this is
Oh,
a
well done.
this is a mock-up. We're never going to use that old flywheel, but you've got to start somewhere. And you know what we are. We don't make drawings.
No.
We do it, and then obviously work it out afterwards. Luckily, I had this old flywheel kicking about. It's off of a Ford Crossflow, so it's got the right size there. So the idea is to be able to decide where that will be able to go, and it looks to me like it will be able to go perfectly. Obviously, we'd have to make a new one of these plates to take the bell housing, and I think we'll make a pattern out of wood and have it cast to make the bell housing.
Okay.
Because, you know, it's a load of fabrication. Right, so John has machined this old flywheel that came off of a Crossflow Ford. Just rubbish, really, but it's quite nice because it's not very hard and it's easy to machine. And this is how we do it. I mean, obviously, if we were clever enough to make a drawing of all this and what have you, You know, we can say, oh yeah, the flywheel wants to be like that, but we can't do that, so we make a mock-up. There's a good chance that that starter ring will finish up just here, so that we don't have to have that lump in there. But that's in the future. But at least we got that, right? So now, this will be the twin plate clutch we've used, and John's machined that so it's got about 1/8 of an inch, which is usually about the amount they are. And have we got a, oh yeah, we've got a thingy there, look. Yeah, so that's like that. That goes on there. Right, so now, that's more or less the flywheel, and we can't get it any closer because that there has got to have an oil seal on it. So it'll be a separate bit, which will be like this, which is the original, but slimmer, so that we can get it on there, screw it on those original centres, and get it running on there. So that's easy, we can do that. That's just a bit of metal. But then, we've got a mount. That's got to be mounted wherever to go in gear with that. So we're pretty confident that we can get that in without hitting the crankcase. So that's a good start. So now, I reckon we make a pattern to be the bulkhead for that bit there to screw onto there. Luckily, we got this out of the in-out box, so we can get some measurements from that. You know, for where the thrust will be and how the splines will be on the clutch. So that's a bit of luck having that, because that's come out of the in-out box. Obviously, we'll put it back. And then this will give us that. So what we do now, now this is left over from pattern making days. Now I don't know whether they do this now, but when I was serving my apprenticeship, all pattern makers made a set out, even though they had a drawing. They'd have a drawing, and then they, with their own tools, because they didn't have a draft board or anything, they just had tools like this. They would make a set out on a lump of wood, which would tell them the contraction to take into account, the core box to take into account, where the core prints would be. So there's a lot of things that they needed to work out. So they just used to make a set out. So if we're going to make a bulkhead, a bell housing, there's a good chance that this might finish up cut out with a jigsaw, a bit of tape put on it. It'll be a rough old job, but it'll be easier than fabricating it, and we'll leave a bit of machining on it. So at the moment this is a set out, but it could easily finish up, this bit of wood finish up the pattern. So I've decided that there is the size the hole will need to be to go over the top of that. And then that will go into there. So this will be different. We'll make a new one of them. And that will be the bell housing. Will go onto there and it'll have a ring of bolts. And then the thing for this will be, now if it gets difficult that we need a core box, the core box puts it all in another deal. We won't have a core box because we know that in this day and age of TIG welding, if we had a nice thing there and we needed to put a lug on there, we just chop it out and weld it on. If we needed a couple of splosses in here to take the clutch mechanism, we just weld a couple of bosses on and machine a hole through it. So we don't have to make a complicated, clever pattern. We can make a simple pattern, which is what special builders do. So that's the next step, really. We've got that. That's out of the thing. So, and also, the spline in there obviously fits a modern gearbox. But, knowing where all this stuff comes from, I wouldn't mind betting that that spline there will fit a Model A clutch. So if Tim's got an old Model A clutch, and we can get the centre out of it, we could then take the centre out of there, put the centre that goes on there, and that will go on there. And then this gives us some measurements to know where we are. I think we'll finish up turning that off down to that size and cutting that off there to move that all as far forward as we can. Because although we can shorten the torque tube, we don't want to go mad. We only want to shorten it a couple of inches at the most. So hopefully we can use that spline, put in the centre of there, and that'll go onto there. So that's how we're going to do that. So the next thing now is the flywheel will go in there. So now we've got to decide how big we want to make the flange to go around the outside. Well, obviously this is going to shrink. I haven't got a contraction rule, so I just use my head. I reckon that with that round there, in aluminium, that'll probably move 1/8 of an inch perhaps a 3/16. But then if the old moulder gives it a good wrap anyway, it'll have a bit of clearance around it anyway. So, you know, it doesn't have to be perfection. The answer with these jobs is to get them done. So that's what we're going to do. But before we do all of that, we're going to have to put the engine back in there to see just how much room we've got. You know, because that could easily crash into the chassis. You know, that, if we get that in there, it'd be lovely. That's what happens sometimes. But anyway, you get the gist. So the next thing now is to put that in the car. We'll screw that back on with a bolt that screws in. Put it back on the car, and then we can see where we can go with that. And how big we can make that to take the bell housing that's got to go over that lot. So that's the next step, really. So, we put the engine in the car and we put the flywheel on that we showed you earlier. And that had this starter ring. So then, we put it in the car and there is no room. You cannot get your feet in there. So we want to get every little bit we can. So I said to John, let's use a Hillman Imp one. So that is what we started off with. That's what we got now. So that's a Hillman Imp size. And then I remembered what we did on the Alvis. We didn't use a start motor like that. We used a start motor that's just one size. Marion put this picture up.
Mary's called Susie.
Susie had put this picture up. And that come from America. That is a Tilton or something, I can't remember. But that's how I did it on the Alvis, because I used a Hillman Imp flywheel on the Alvis. And we did that, and then all we did was we made a blooming great hole in the bell housing for the start motor to go through. So the start motor's not mounted on the bell housing, it's mounted on the plate. So we've now decided that might be the way we go. So anyway, so that inch that we've managed to get there is very, very useful. And then that, you know, we could still use it. We always change our mind every 5 minutes, but I think the one with the snout will be better. Because all it does is it goes in a hole, and then you have a clamp goes around it and it just holds it. So you haven't got all this diameter here, which is holding the starter motor off.
And
so
have you got a starter motor with a snout there?
No,
oh,
unfortunately. And when I did it on the Alvis, I had to buy two, because I told the bloke, I said, it's coming in from the back, it will need to go the other way. No. Anyway, in the end, I bought one, and then I had to buy another one from America going the right way, but that's another story. But anyway, so now, we put the engine in, and that's where the engine mounts there. That mounts on there. Now, we're not going to move the engine that far forward, but we might have to move it a whisker to get it in, because we're going to shorten that down. We're going to shorten that torque arm down, which doesn't affect anything, but we might have to move the engine a whisker. So luckily, look, we had some rods. So we stuck it through the holes, and we can actually slide it up and down. So we'll be able to get it all set lovely, and then we'll move those probably, or whatever. But I thought that was quite a good idea, that, look. Being able to move it up and down, so we're going to do that. The radiator, there's 3 inches here before this touches the radiator. We ain't going to move it that much. But we're going to we might have to move it a whisker. Now we ain't doing anything yet. All we're doing at the moment is the idea. Because I know there'll be people saying, oh, I'm ruining that lovely original car. Well, it ain't an original car, because at one stage it was a Pizza Hut car. It had wheels like that on it, and a roll cage all over the top of it. And when it became valuable as an ordinary car, it got put back again. So that bit on the chassis there is new, I reckon, because when it was a Pizza Hut car, it had telescopic dampers. So, you know, it's not a lovely original car. If it was an absolutely mint lovely original car, I wouldn't touch it. But I think having a midget in this country, nobody realises, you know, what these Offys were, you know. And so if we've got a clutch and a bit of a gearbox, and we can go to Prescott and perhaps go up the hill, we might even go to Goodwood and go up the hill. We might even be able to race it, because my mate Stuart Harper bought an Indy car that me and Ed used to own, and they run that against the racing cars. So what's the difference between an Indy car and this car? Nothing really. So I thought it's worth doing. I mean, I know a lot of you just say, you do what you want to do, Ivan, but there will be people who say, oh, it's a shame and all that. Well, they'll have to put up with it, because we're going to do it. And if we can make it work, I think it'll be a knockout. And I think people go, blimey, them little officers are good. Whereas they wouldn't know unless we did it, because unless you go to America, you ain't going to see one running.
Yeah, we're just roughing it out to get the size.
Right, what we're doing here, we're going to make a simple pattern. We're going to glue these up until they get up to here, and then we're going to bring them in, and somehow or other we'll make it so that we can press the clutch out. And because obviously making this out of, you know, like fabricating it would take a lot, and a load of welding and everything. So if we just make a simple pattern with no core box, this will be tapered that way, and inside it will be tapered that way. So they just literally put it in the sand, turn it over, pull it out, and that's it. So it's a very, very simple pattern, but it's going to save a load of fabricating. And the fact it's a brand new aluminium casting, it means if we want to put a lump on somewhere, for instance, if we had to put 2 lumps on, you'd have to make a core box, it'd have to have loose pieces, right wrong. All we would do, we'd just drill a hole through, turn up a couple of bosses, and TIG weld them on. So it means a lot easier than making a real proper pattern, because to make a proper pattern would be quite serious. And the fact that when it's done, it's only going to be about like that. We can put it in the lathe, and we can turn the inside, and we can turn the outside. So it's
And where will you get that done?
Well, Timothy has quite a lot of aluminium casting done. So the fact that he has quite a lot done, there's a good chance that we could throw ourselves on the mercy of the foundry, and they'll probably do it for us in a couple of days, which would be good if we can get it done. And then we'll have a nice aluminium chunk that we can make something of. Right, this is the pattern so far. Obviously we've got to sand it and get it to a thing. That's the bit where the bolts are going. There'll be another thing, and then that is where the gearbox will bolt. That'll go on there. Obviously it's all going to be tapered. Bit of primer, high build 2-pack primer, rub it down, make it nice and smooth, done. So that's that. So then, we've actually settled for the Hillman starter ring, which is on there, but that is then going to finish up there. So that would be further back, nearer to this. And then we think we might be able to get a single thing in there.
Yeah.
That's it, yeah, because we've got a shelving made, a single straight starter motor in there, probably Tilton, and that's it. But you know, I think if we have to move the engine an inch and take a little bit off of there, that is all.
Okay, so it's all happening.
Yeah, so don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to press that button. What do they call it, Susie?
Like.
A like button. And we're getting on with it.
And
And,
what about asking if there's any feedback?
oh yeah, tell us what you think, you know.